confessions made to police officers being admissible, because there was no evidence that was forthcoming. Even in respect of these terrorist cases, some of them, see, again, where very often public officials have been at the receiving end of terrorism. There has been many successful prosecutions for the reason that the evidence was not forthcoming. Now, even in the case of the Central Bank, of course, there was evidence because there were certain persons who were arrested who had made confessions, and those confessions were finally declared admissible, and on the basis of those confessions.
Appreciative of the difficulties, I would not deny that they don't. I would not say that they don't exist. But I believe the commissioners are far more aware of all these than I do. I am a layman. But I would like to be comfortable that the systems available are adequate, and if they are not, that the LRRC makes recommendations to correct those flaws. I don't know. I'm not conversant enough with these processes to make grand pronouncements about practical things like that.
I agree with you, Mr. Senegal, not only on the point that you made, that Chairman pointed out, of course, the problem was evidence, but it is the responsibility of the state to get to the bottom of things. That is one. Second, also very important thing that if you don't investigate and prosecute the few wrongdoers, the name of the large majority to other professionals will be affected. So it's important that you investigate. So I agree with you, but
at one point,
the Commission will focus on. Yeah.
Yes. No, but at one point there was this argument made that about troop morale. That doesn't hold water.
I don't think the law and order situation can be compromised.
Exactly. And was an important element, I agree. Now, for example, when the tsunami happened and a form is sent to a refugee camp dominated by Tamil people, and the form is in Sinhala, that is preventable. You don't need to legislate. The legislation is there. It's in the Constitution, the Language Act. But that's an administrative. You can say it's an error, but you should be more sensitive to those things. But I believe that Mr. Gunasekara, for all my disagreements with him on the issue of devolution, has been doing a good job in terms of getting things done. We need to develop the human resources that are capable of delivering. We didn't have enough officials who are bilingual or trilingual, who can deal with multiple situations where day-to-day things, small things, you don't need to develop power to do that, but you should have some kind of decentralization with the empowerment of the officials in terms of skills and other resources. So I think that there is more space now. We have to understand the 30-year-old war we are talking about, and we are still 1.5 years after that. It takes years for societies to recover. America still has not recovered from Katrina, the war. We recovered from the tsunami. We can recover from this, but let us not be in a hurry. But let's take one thing at a time, but let us not be too slow either. I think that things are happening moving in the correct direction. I think the pace is not alarmingly slow. But I would rather that it be slow than it be too hasty.
Given the very impartial approach that you have displayed today, I wish to ask you a question on this question of colonization.
The lines drawn by the British in demarcating provinces. Right? So when you talk about those areas, we need to unpack that concept of that area. Where is the population? Where is the population most dense? What are the demographic patterns and so on? On the other hand, this resolving for status quo uh, assumes that people don't die, that populations, people don't move around. So that you resolve for today's status quo, 10 years from now you have to re-resolve for the status quo of that day. So that is not good. But what there needs to be clarity is the purpose of the exercise, settlement or development or whatever it is, and a sensitivity to the perceptions and insecurities of all communities. So, if a state, if a government goes to a predominantly Tamil, an area that is predominantly made up of Tamil people, and says, okay, we are going to demarcate this and we are going to put some Muslims there, that is being very insensitive. Because it will just feed that insecurity further, and that makes for destabilization. But in the case of the colonization schemes and settlements, perhaps there was less sensitivity to those issues then than there would be now. And perhaps in retrospect we can say it would have been better if you had also seen to the demographic, the density, the population issues, that the lack of land, etc., that people closest to that area. You can take the inner end of the eastern province and say, well, there are no Tamils there. But then you can't put someone from Mugewudu without asking someone in Batiklo, what do you think? So I agree.
But of course, the entire, if you read a brass in the grain of sand, belongs to the entire system. And the land is available in those areas, not in the south. That is also the factor.
That is also, but that is not the only factor where human beings are. They are made up of all kinds of insecurities and fears.
You can't force people to go. What I'm saying is if people elect to go to those areas, and it is sponsored by the government, do you think it's objectionable?
I think that there are no yes or no answers to that kind of question, but I think that a consideration, a sober consideration of all the factors pertaining to that issue of settlement or whatever, with fidelity to the idea that you need to look at the past and to the future. If those elements are brought into the whole process of consideration, I think that the outcome will be less violent and less problematic. We don't know what's going to happen 2 generations from now, but we might be already planting the seeds for very violent outcome 2 generations down the line without knowing. But when you know that there are certain things that feed people's insecurities, that give power to the worst elements of the political society, why feed them?
On the other hand, you give land to people of that area. What is objectionable? If there is more land available, bringing outsiders.
Nothing objectionable. There is nothing objectionable.
Now bringing people from the south, for example. We say bringing people from the south to an area which is predominantly Tamil. But there is a lot of land available in those areas. To keep the people in those areas of the land. In addition to bringing people from outside. Because one reason is, what they say is, in the south, there is a shortage of land. There is so much of land, large tracts of land, available for development in those areas. So, now, that's what I want to find out, because you have a very impartial approach to these problems.
I am not impartial. I have a license.
Well, you gave us the impression that you were very impartial.
Thank you.
No, another thing is,
That's why I want to.
if 2 communities live apart, then how can you reconcile? You must come closer. If you encourage to live apart, then what's the meaning of reconciliation?
No, you can't force people to live in ethnic enclaves. You can't force people to integrate. But now, in the case of someone from a land scarce area, some people from an area where there is scarcity of land, being resettled somewhere, we have enough knowledge about what happened over the last 100, 200 years to know what kinds of outcomes are possible if proper communication does not happen among the communities by the state, by the implementing authority. So, if you don't at least inform people who are close to that area, who will be their neighbors eventually, that we are considering this, obtain their views. Subject, of course, you can say, well, it's every blade of grass, every blade of sand, so what's wrong? But there are realities that are additional to that particular contention, which I think should be considered in implementing such policies.
Okay. From your presentation, and certainly some of those recommendations are most useful, or some of those views that you expressed are most useful in the formulation of our recommendations to the executive. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you again, Mr. Senator. May I now invite Dr. S. Mahadeva to make his presentation. Thank you.